Welcome to the deep dive. Looks like we're diving deep into Atlantis this time. You sent us a ton of stuff on it, articles, documentaries, even some pretty far out philosophy.
It's wild how Atlantis grabs people across pretty much every culture and time, really.
Yeah. Like one question that really stood out was Atlantis a real place or just a cautionary tale? We've got a lot to cover to help answer that.
Absolutely. We've got everything from Plato's stories in ancient Greece to Edgar Case's psychic readings in the 20th century, even some modern theories linking Atlantis to, aliens. Tying it all together, it's a challenge.
Okay, so let's start with the most famous source on Atlantis.
Yeah.
Plato. What did he actually say?
Okay, so Plato described Atlantis as this super powerful, island nation. It was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. We're talking bigger than ancient Libya and Asia Minor combined.
So
Huge, Western Europe huge.
wow. But it wasn't just about size, right? Plato said they were really advanced, technologically and culturally.
Exactly. Abundant resources, including this mysterious metal called orichalcum, more precious than gold, supposedly.
Orichalcum. Never heard of it.
It was used in everything, supposedly. Their temples, their weapons, their tools.
Huh. So no orichalcum lying around, I guess.
Not a trace. Which, of course, adds to the whole Atlantis mystery, right? Their capital city was massive, built in rings of land and water, twice the size of Imperial Rome.
Wait, seriously? That big? With what, palaces and temples?
Huge harbor, palaces, temples devoted to Poseidon. He was their main god.
It's hard to even imagine. Okay, so we've got powerful, wealthy, advanced. Then what? How did they vanish?
According to Plato, gone in a single day and night, a total cataclysm.
Like what?
Earthquakes, floods, volcanoes, the whole shebang, just swallowed by the sea, no trace.
Poof. An incredible story. But hold on. Plato got this from Solon, who heard it from Egyptian priests, right? Sounds a bit mythical. Is there any evidence at all backing this up?
That's the thing about Atlantis. It's right on the edge of myth and reality. No actual proof of a sunken city, at least not one matching Plato's description. But there are some interesting geological features in the Atlantic.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. What kind of features?
Well, for one, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. It's massive, runs right down the middle of the Atlantic. And along it, you've got volcanic islands like the Azores and Madeira.
So could those be like the mountaintops of what used to be a bigger landmass?
Some people think so, if you factor in tectonic shifts, rising sea levels over thousands of years.
It's possible. If there was a big landmass there, it could have gone underwater gradually as the oceans rose after the Ice Age. Makes sense why we haven't found anything obvious. Thousands of feet of water. But there's also the more esoteric side of Atlantis, right? We mentioned Edgar Case earlier. What did he say?
He sees Atlantis as where things get even more, interesting. He didn't just see it as a place, he saw it as a whole stage of human evolution. He connected it to these root races from Theosophy.
I'm familiar with Theosophy, but for our listeners, could you break down these root races?
Okay, so Theosophy says there are 7 root races. Each one is a step in human development. Case said Atlantis was the 4th, a bridge between the spiritual and material worlds.
Interesting. Building on that idea of Atlantis being more than just a physical place.
Yeah.
But wait, how did Case even get this information?
Case was a psychic. He'd go into trances and give these super detailed readings, past lives, ancient history, all sorts of stuff.
So he was tapping into, what, some universal knowledge?
Right. And his Atlantis readings are very detailed. He describes them living in harmony with nature, using sound and vibration to control their surroundings.
Sounding like science fiction now.
Right. But it's cool how these ideas about sound and vibration affecting the world, they line up with some modern physics ideas about energy and frequency. Case even said Atlanteans had strong psychic abilities, seeing the past and future, communicating telepathically, all through training their right brain.
Wow. Modern science is just starting to look into that stuff. Okay, so Casey's Atlantis. We've got advanced tech, psychic powers, deep connection to nature. It's like utopia, or it was. He talked about their downfall too, right? What happened?
He believed it was a gradual thing. Their spiritual values declined, they became too materialistic, misused their tech, and boom.
Classic hubris story. Their tech got ahead of their wisdom. So we have 2 very different stories now. Plato's one big event, Case's gradual decline. Any other notable theories about how Atlantis fell?
Oh, tons. Natural disaster, a volcano, a meteor, alien attack, even self-destruction with super weapons.
Wow. Those are some wild theories. But it seems like technology always plays a part, right? A little bit of a warning for us, maybe?
It makes you think, for sure. Whether Atlantis was real or symbolic, it reminds us about balance, responsibility, especially with powerful technology.
You've mentioned advanced tech a lot. One question we got was about the specifics, like what incredible tech did they have, and was there alien influence? Where do we even begin with that?
Things get super interesting here. Remember those root races? Some think the divine men who supposedly started the Atlantean era, they were aliens from the Pleiades star system, spiritually and technologically advanced.
Wait, so aliens kickstarted Atlantis. That would explain the tech.
That's the theory. And it gets even wilder, that orichalcum we talked about. Some say it wasn't natural at all, but some kind of alien alloy.
Mind-blowing. Okay, if these advanced beings were involved, what could the Atlanteans do? What was their tech like?
Well, the biggest idea is that they harnessed vril.
Vril, like in those old sci-fi books.
It's made its way into pop culture for sure, but the concept is ancient, this life force energy. Think prana or chi. It's everywhere, in everything. Theosophy says ancient folks like Atlanteans could tap into this and do amazing things.
So the Atlanteans used vril to power everything. What did they do with it?
Pretty incredible things. Supposedly they mastered gravity control.
Flying cars, levitating cities, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Huge flying machines, moving stuff around, who knows what else. Some even say they had advanced healing and maybe even immortality.
No, that's going down the rabbit hole.
Okay.
But if they were so good, how could they be destroyed? Was there a flaw in vril?
Like everything Atlantis, we've got theories. Misusing the tech, maybe vril weapons backfired. Or a natural disaster, maybe another alien civilization, who knows?
It's still a mystery then.
Totally. And that's what makes it so fascinating, thinking about the possibilities of advanced tech, but also the choices we make as humans.
We've covered a lot about their tech and downfall, but what about the people themselves? What was their society like? How did they live?
Right to the heart of what Atlantis represents. Many say they lived in harmony with nature, technology that helped not hurt the world.
No paving over paradise for factories then.
Nope. Eco-friendly cities, gardens, waterways, they understood the connection between everything and lived that way.
Like a vision of the future we want. What about social structure?
The sources are limited, often clash, but most think they had a hierarchy. Priest-kings leading, guiding the people. But for that, we need to go deeper into their spiritual side. Remember how Case talked about them using sound and vibration?
Yeah, fascinating idea.
Right. Some think they built tech based on this. Imagine healing with sound, growing crops, even controlling the weather. Sounds crazy, but think about the power of sound and vibration at a quantum level.
Mind-blowing, like science and magic were the same thing. Did they have those psychic powers too, like Kate said?
Many believe so. Seeing the past and future, telepathy, influencing the world with their mind.
Real-life Jedi, like unlocking a level of human potential most of us can only dream of. But if they were that good, spiritually and technologically, what caused their downfall?
A question for the ages. Many think it was balance, or the lack of it. They got too focused on material things, lost their spiritual growth, their connection to the source of their power.
Victims of their own success. Ambition and power overshadowed wisdom and compassion.
Exactly, and it devastated them. Technology and spiritual decline led to their destruction.
A lesson that resonates even today. Trying to balance our own technological growth with wisdom and responsibility for the planet.
Absolutely. Atlantis reminds us about balance, responsibility, and growing our inner wisdom alongside our tech.
Okay, you've talked about vril a lot, this life force, but we haven't gotten into what they actually did with it. What were some of their most amazing feats?
Now we go from established theory into pure speculation. Fact and fiction blur here. But according to various traditions, the things they did with vril are pretty incredible.
Okay, hit me with the mind-blowing stuff. Their greatest hits, tech-wise.
All right, one of the most popular beliefs is that they cracked anti-gravity.
Like flying cars, levitating cities, for real.
Yep. Huge vril-powered flying machines, traveling far, moving big stuff, you name it.
Now that is cool. What else?
Advanced healing, sound and light frequencies to heal injuries, cure diseases.
Like something out of Star Trek.
Right. But think about it. If they were tuned into those subtle energies like we talked about before, it makes sense. Precisely. And speaking of energy, remember Case talked about the Great Crystal?
Oh yeah, powered their whole civilization.
Right. Giant crystal focuses solar energy, transmits it wirelessly. Homes, machines, even their ships ran on it.
So free energy from the sun. like what we're trying to do now.
Yeah.
But they perfected it.
Exactly. What's crazy is that some scientists think wireless energy transmission, like Case described, might actually be possible.
Incredible. Maybe we're rediscovering ancient knowledge, not inventing it.
An interesting thought. But the Atlanteans, they supposedly had no limits with Vril. Some even say they had time travel tech.
Time travel. All right, now that's getting into serious science fiction territory.
I know, it's wild. But the idea is they could manipulate space and time with Vril, travel to different points in history.
Wow, that is pretty mind-blowing even for this show. But with that kind of tech, how could they be destroyed?
That brings us to the biggest Atlantis mystery, their fall.
All right, let's get into it. What are the top theories for what took them down?
We've touched on them, haven't we? Everything from natural disasters to, well, blowing themselves up.
Okay, let's break it down. Starting with natural disasters. What could wipe out a whole civilization?
Well, we've talked about massive volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, incredibly destructive, especially on a large scale.
Yeah. Imagine a volcano splitting an island in half, or an earthquake causing giant tsunamis wiping out coastlines.
Exactly. And we have geological evidence that these things have happened before.
Definitely possible then. What about the idea that they destroyed themselves? How could that happen?
Maybe they misused their tech. Maybe they built weapons, super weapons, that backfired.
Like accidentally blowing themselves up?
A scary thought, right. But definitely possible. It's a warning to us to be careful with our tech.
Like they say, with great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly. Another possibility is that they had a spiritual or moral decline.
They got corrupt, decadent, forgot their values, and destroyed themselves from within.
A classic story of fallen civilizations. It reminds us that tech isn't enough. You need wisdom, compassion, a shared purpose.
Well said. Okay, now for the more speculative stuff. Aliens. Could they have played a part in Atlantis' fall? What are the theories there?
Definitely out there, but fun to think about. Some think Atlantis might have been attacked by another hostile alien civilization.
An alien invasion, like in the movies.
Exactly. No evidence, but it definitely captures the imagination.
For sure. But if we're going there, couldn't aliens have helped them too? Shared their tech?
Could be. It goes along with those ancient astronaut theories. Extraterrestrials visiting, influencing humans.
So maybe aliens helped, then things went bad, and they left Atlantis hanging.
Who knows? The possibilities are endless. But ultimately, we're left with more questions than answers.
It seems like that's the theme with Atlantis. It's this mystery that's fascinated people for centuries, keeps inspiring us to search for answers. But what about the fact that we haven't found any physical evidence? If they were so advanced and everywhere, shouldn't we have found something by now?
It's a great question. And it's one that has puzzled researchers for, well, a long time. If you think about it, there are a few possible explanations. One is that if Atlantis was destroyed in a cataclysm, as many believe, the evidence could be buried under miles of ocean sediment, scattered across the seafloor. It would be like looking for a needle in a haystack, except the haystack is the entire Atlantic Ocean.
That's quite a haystack. And we barely explored any of it. What are some other explanations?
Well, what if we're looking in the wrong place? Plato said Atlantis was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which most people think is the Strait of Gibraltar. But maybe that's wrong, or even a deliberate lie.
Wait, so you're saying Atlantis might not have even been in the Atlantic?
It's possible. Some researchers think it might have been in the Mediterranean Sea, the Caribbean, even Antarctica.
Wow, that's a game changer. But if we can't even trust Plato's location, how can we know anything for sure about Atlantis?
That's the challenge and the allure of this whole thing. It's possible that Plato was mixing sources, real events, old myths, philosophical lessons. Maybe he was trying to teach us something, not give a history lesson.
So Atlantis could be a mix of fact and fiction, designed to make us think.
Exactly. It's so hard to separate the real from the made-up, which makes searching for Atlantis even more complicated.
For sure. But even if we never find solid proof, Atlantis makes us think about lost civilizations and what they might have known.
It reminds us how much we still don't know about our planet and its history.
Absolutely. But let's shift gears a bit. What about the legacy of Atlantis? How has this story impacted us, our culture, even how we think about history?
The impact is huge. Atlantis is a symbol. Lost knowledge, advanced tech, potential for good and bad. It's inspired countless books, movies, TV shows, video games, even art.
It really is everywhere. From Jules Verne to Aquaman, everyone loves Atlantis.
Exactly, but it's not just entertainment. This myth has led to real expeditions, scientific research. People have been looking for this place for centuries.
It's incredible how a story can inspire so much real-world action.
It is. And it's not just about finding a city, it's about a deeper need we have to understand our past, our potential, and learn from those who came before.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So even if we never find proof, searching for Atlantis has meaning. It makes us think differently, be open to new ideas.
Exactly. But let's think about our listeners for a second. What does all this mean for them? Why should they care about this ancient story?
That's a great question. I think the Atlantis story, real or not, has big lessons for all of us.
I'm all ears. What kind of lessons are we talking about?
The biggest one is balance. Atlanteans, in the stories, they achieved so much, but ultimately messed up. They forgot their spirituality, misused their power, and it was their downfall.
It sounds a lot like what we're dealing with now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Technology growing so fast, we need wisdom and responsibility to keep up.
Exactly. Atlantis warns us. Real progress isn't just about stuff and tech. It's wisdom, compassion, respect for all life. Such a powerful message. And remember, some say Atlanteans were super connected to nature. They understood how everything was linked and lived accordingly.
Right, and that's another lesson. We're part of a bigger system, and our actions affect everything.
Makes you wonder what we could achieve if we tapped into that same awareness and understanding as the Atlanteans. But maybe that's a deep dive for another day.
It is. The main takeaway from Atlantis. Our choices, individual and collective, they matter. It's up to us to learn from the past, reach our potential, and create a future that honors tech and spirituality.
Great message to end on. But before we totally wrap this up, let's dig a little deeper into the more, shall we say, spiritual side of Atlantis. We talked about tech and nature, but what about their beliefs and practices? What did their spirituality look like?
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Atlanteans are often described as having this deep understanding of the universe, how everything's connected, the energy flowing through it all.
So they weren't just worshiping gods. They had a bigger picture in mind.
Exactly. Their spirituality and their science were very closely linked. They understood natural laws, but on a deeper level.
Okay, paint us a picture. What were some of their core beliefs?
Well, they believed in this universal life force, often called vril, which was present in everything. They saw this as the source of creation and the key to their tech.
Vril again. It's everywhere when you talk about Atlantis.
Right. It shows how important this idea of interconnected energy, consciousness, and the physical world was to them. They also believed in reincarnation, the soul evolving over many lifetimes.
So it wasn't just about this one life. They believed in a bigger cycle.
Yes. Life was a journey of learning and spiritual growth. Each life a chance to become more enlightened.
That's a beautiful idea. Similar to some Eastern spiritual traditions.
It's like a common thread. Makes you wonder if they interacted with other cultures that had similar beliefs.
Fascinating. Okay, so what about their actual practices? Temples, priests, rituals.
Many beliefs say. Case described elaborate temples. They'd gather there to meditate, perform rituals, connect with the divine.
So actively working on their spiritual connection, not just relying on tech.
Exactly. They knew tech was just a tool. Real power and wisdom came from within.
That's a message we could all use today. So easy to get caught up in technology and forget about our inner world.
For sure. But you brought up something else important, their connection to nature. Why was that such a big part of their spirituality?
Well, everything we've talked about shows their respect for nature. They understood we're part of the ecosystem, not separate from it.
Absolutely. Nature was sacred to them. Their spiritual well-being was linked to the planet's health.
A timely message, given climate change and all the damage we're doing.
Definitely. The Atlanteans may have had a much better, more sustainable relationship with nature than we do now.
Makes you think, what could we learn from them?
Right. Maybe their story can guide us toward a better way of living, in balance with ourselves, each other, and the planet. But even with their advanced tech, their spiritual practices, their connection to nature, they fell.
So, any final thoughts on what specifically went wrong?
Many interpretations, as we've discussed. Some say they depended too much on tech, lost their spiritual core. Others, that they focused too much on wealth and power, ignoring their community and the environment.
The classic story of success leading to downfall.
Exactly. It warns us that even advanced civilizations aren't immune to human nature's traps.
Okay, so maybe they became materialistic or their tech outpaced their spirituality, but some think they misused their tech more directly.
You mean the theory they created weapons of mass destruction that blew up in their faces?
Exactly. What kind of weapons? And is there anything to back that up?
No proof, of course. But some think they might have had something like nuclear weapons, or even stranger tech that could use the Earth's own power.
So weapons that could level cities or even cause natural disasters.
Terrifying, right. But if they could control gravity and use the sun's energy, who knows what else they could do?
Makes sense. And if they had them, it's possible they misused them, intentionally or not, and destroyed themselves.
A reminder. Even amazing tech is dangerous in the wrong hands.
It is. But those super weapons raise another question. Was it all their fault? Or was something else involved?
Good question. We've talked about natural disasters, but some theories suggest something more deliberate. Maybe a rival civilization, or even aliens.
An ancient world war with Atlantis on the losing side. That's intense.
Right, it taps into that age-old story of conflict and competition, always part of human history.
What are those alien theories?
They're definitely more speculative, but fun. Some people believe aliens visited or even controlled Atlantis.
Aliens. Helping them.
Oh.
Maybe attacking them.
Who knows? Maybe they give the Atlanteans their tech. Maybe they saw them as a threat and wiped them out.
Wow. The more we dig into this, the more questions pop up.
That's Atlantis for you.
Oh.
It keeps us guessing and makes us question what we think we know about the past. It's inspiring, really.
Speaking of questioning what we know, it's strange that we haven't found any physical proof, right?
Yeah.
If they were so advanced and widespread, shouldn't there be something?
It's a great question, and it's one that has stumped people for a long time. There are a couple of possible reasons for this. For one, if they were wiped out by a disaster, the evidence could be under miles of ocean mud, spread all over the seafloor. Finding it would be insanely difficult.
Like trying to find a specific grain of sand on a beach.
Exactly. Plus, we've only explored a tiny bit of the ocean floor.
Okay, that makes sense. Any other possibilities?
Well, what if we're looking in the wrong place entirely? Plato put Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Most people think that means the Strait of Gibraltar. But maybe it's a mistranslation or even a deliberate lie meant to hide the true location.
Wait, so maybe Atlantis wasn't even in the Atlantic?
It's possible. Some researchers have suggested other spots. The Mediterranean Sea, the Caribbean, even Antarctica.
Wow, that changes things.
Yeah.
But if we can't trust Plato on the location, can we trust anything he said about Atlantis?
That's the thing, isn't it? The challenge and the excitement. Plato could have been mixing real history, old myths, and philosophical ideas. Maybe he was trying to teach us a lesson about civilization instead of giving a straight history report.
So Atlantis could be this mix of truth and fiction, designed to make us think.
Exactly. It's hard to separate the real from the made up, and that makes looking for Atlantis even more difficult.
Totally. But even without definite proof, Atlantis gets people thinking about lost civilizations and what they might have known.
It reminds us that there's so much we don't know about our planet and our history, and it encourages us to keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep searching for answers.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of interesting things related to Atlantis, but let's bring it back to our listeners. What does all this mean for them? Why should they care about a story from so long ago?
Great question. Real or not, I think the Atlantis story has valuable lessons for everyone.
Okay, I'm ready for the takeaways. What can we learn from Atlantis?
The biggest one is balance. In the stories, Atlanteans did amazing things, but they messed up. They became too focused on material things, neglected their spiritual side, misused their power, and it destroyed them.
It's like that classic story of having power, but not the wisdom to use it right.
Exactly. It's a relevant message for us today. We're developing powerful technologies, so we need wisdom, compassion, and responsibility to make sure we're using them for good.
True progress isn't just about tech, it's about our spiritual and moral growth as well.
Absolutely. And Atlantis also shows us that everything is connected. Some believe they understood how to use the power of nature and tap into energies that we're just starting to learn about.
Imagine what we could achieve if we could reach that same level of understanding.
Right. It reminds us that we're part of a bigger system and our choices affect everything.
That's a powerful thought. But maybe we'll save that deep dive for another time.
It's amazing how Atlantis pops up everywhere, human history, mythology. It's like this blend of ancient wisdom, super advanced tech, and those big questions about where we even came from.
Yeah. And speaking of ancient wisdom, we touched on this earlier. Some say Atlanteans were giants. That's a wild one. Where does that idea come from?
It goes back to those root races. Theosophy says Atlanteans were the fourth root race, often described as taller, stronger than us.
Like superhuman.
Yeah.
Comic book stuff.
It's a cool image, right? Helena Blavatsky, one of the founders of Theosophy, she even said Atlanteans were descended from the Lemurians, an even older civilization before Atlantis.
Now we're getting into some deep, deep stuff. Lemuria. What's the story there?
Even more mysterious than Atlantis. Somewhere in the Pacific, supposedly. Some think it was a paradise, humans living in harmony with nature, super psychic powers, the whole thing.
Like the Garden of Eden, but for civilizations. Peace, harmony, enlightenment.
Exactly. And some think they passed their knowledge to the Atlanteans, who then took it even further with their tech.
A fascinating connection. But if Lemuria was so spiritually advanced, why'd they vanish?
Lots of theories. One is they focused too much on the spiritual, neglected the physical world, and that led to their downfall.
So, opposite of Atlantis. Atlantis got too materialistic. Lemuria lost touch with the material. Really highlights that need for balance, huh?
It does. Back to Atlanteans as giants, though. Is there any actual evidence, or is it all just stories?
Yeah, like giant skeletons.
Yeah.
Did we find any?
There have been discoveries of large skeletons, yeah, but lots of those are fake or have been explained away. You know those giant skeleton photos online?
Oh yeah, those are easy to debunk.
Exactly. But there are those megalithic structures like Stonehenge, the pyramids. Some people think only giants could build those.
A popular theory, especially for those who love ancient mysteries.
It is. No proof, of course, but it's fun to think about.
It is. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Atlantean daily life. We talk tech and beliefs, but what about the everyday stuff? What do they eat, wear, homes, all that?
Great questions. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot to go on, mostly interpretations of esoteric teachings and channeled messages, which are kind of subjective, you know?
Right. No Atlantean cookbooks or fashion magazines lying around.
Exactly. But from what we can piece together, it seems their life was super connected to nature. Living in harmony, technology that helped the environment, not hurt it.
So no polluting the oceans or clear-cutting forests.
Not if you believe in the harmonious Atlantis, no. They understood the ecosystem and lived sustainably.
Okay, so they were eco-conscious. What about their diet? All vegetarians.
Hard to say for sure, but some think it was mostly plants, fruits, nuts, seeds. Maybe algae and seaweed, which are super nutritious and sustainable.
Ancient vegans, who knew?
It's an interesting idea. Fits their connection to nature.
It does. So eco-friendly homes, healthy food, psychic powers. Sounds like a pretty good life.
It does, doesn't it? A glimpse of what might be possible for us. Advanced tech and spirituality, all in tune with nature.
Okay, so we have this picture of idyllic Atlantean life. But every society has its structure, right? Were they all peaceful and equal, or were there hierarchies, power struggles?
Tough to say for sure. Some think it was total utopia, everyone equal, perfect harmony. Others say no, they had social hierarchies and power structures like anyone else.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine any society, especially one that advanced, without some kind of leadership organization.
I agree. And even in utopia, you're going to have challenges, right? Conflict happens.
True. Which brings us back to their downfall. What are some scenarios that could lead to this advanced civilization being wiped out?
We've talked about a lot of them, haven't we? Natural disasters, self-destruction, aliens.
Okay, so let's revisit them. Natural disasters first. What kind of events could take down a whole civilization?
Well, massive volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, those can be devastating, especially on a large scale.
Right, like a volcano blows up, rips an island apart. Or an earthquake triggers huge tsunamis wiping out coastlines.
Exactly. And we know those things have happened before, geologically speaking.
Okay, so that's definitely possible. What about self-destruction? How could the Atlanteans have done that?
One way is misusing technology. Maybe they built super weapons that backfire.
Like they blew themselves up by accident.
Scary, right. But possible. A reminder to be careful with our own tech.
Like we said, great power, great responsibility.
Exactly. Another possibility is that they experienced some kind of spiritual or moral decline. You know, they lost their way.
So they became corrupt, obsessed with power, forgot their values, and it destroyed them from the inside.
A classic story for fallen civilizations. Reminds us that technology isn't enough. You need wisdom, compassion, a shared purpose.
Well said. Okay, now for the more speculative stuff.
Aliens.
Any plausible scenarios where they could have been involved in Atlantis' end?
Those theories are out there, for sure. More speculation than evidence, but fun to think about. Some believe Atlantis might have been attacked by another hostile alien civilization.
An alien invasion, like in those sci-fi movies.
Exactly. No evidence, but it's a cool idea.
It is. But if we're thinking about aliens, couldn't they have helped the Atlanteans too? Shared their tech, maybe?
Maybe. It fits with the ancient astronaut theories, right? Aliens visiting Earth, influencing humans.
So maybe aliens helped, but then things went bad, and they left Atlantis on their own.
Who knows? There are so many possibilities. But in the end, we're left with more questions than answers.
That seems to be the theme with Atlantis. It's this big mystery that's fascinated people for centuries, and it's still inspiring us to search for answers, to question what we think we know, to imagine what might have been. What about Edgar Cayce? We mentioned him before, his psychic readings about Atlantis.
Casey's take is fascinating. He said he accessed information about Atlantis through his readings, and they're full of incredible detail about their culture, technology, and spiritual beliefs.
Okay, I'm ready to hear more. What kind of things did Cayce reveal about the Atlanteans?
He described them as incredibly advanced, way beyond us today. Crystals to harness energy, flying machines powered by this mysterious vril, even manipulating time and space.
Mind-blowing. Did he get into specifics about how any of this stuff worked?
Oh, yeah. He talked about the Twi stone, this giant crystal they used to focus energy from the sun.
So like a massive solar panel.
Exactly. They use this energy to power their homes, machines, even their flying ships.
Wow, incredible. What about the flying machines? How did those supposedly work?
Cayce said they were powered by vril, which he described as this universal life force present in everything.
Vril again. It seems like that's central to almost every idea about Atlantis.
It really is. Cayce believed that the Atlanteans had figured out how to tap into this energy and use it for all sorts of things, like transportation, healing, even communication.
So they were basically energy masters.
You could say that. Cayce believed that their control of vril was the key to their advanced tech. But he also had some interesting thoughts on why they fell.
Right, they were so advanced, but something happened. Why? What did Cayce say?
He said it was their spiritual values that declined. They became too obsessed with material things and power, and they started misusing their technology.
It's that classic story of getting too big for your britches, right? Arrogance and ambition leading to downfall.
Exactly. Cayce believed this obsession with power and tech led to their destruction. It's a warning we should pay attention to today.
It is. We need to remember that spiritual well-being and using tech responsibly are important if we want to avoid making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I want to mention one detail from Cayce's readings. He said some Atlanteans survived the disaster and went to other parts of the world.
That's right, and he believed they took their knowledge and wisdom with them, which influenced other cultures around the world.
So Atlantis lived on, in a way, through these survivors.
According to Cayce, yes. He thought the spirit of Atlantis is still with us today, inspiring us to search for greater knowledge, wisdom, and understanding.
That's an inspiring thought. Maybe there are remnants of Atlantean culture and tech hidden somewhere, just waiting to be found.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Maybe someday we'll uncover those lost pieces and learn even more about this fascinating civilization.
We've gone deep on Atlantis, haven't we? From Plato's stories to Edgar Cayce's readings, their tech, their beliefs, all those theories about how they vanished.
It's been a wild ride, but the mystery's still there.
Yeah. Maybe that's what keeps us coming back. Atlantis makes us think, question things, search for answers.
Absolutely. It reminds us how much we don't know about our own planet.
Okay, before we wrap up completely, a question for our listeners. We've looked at so many ideas, but what do you think happened to Atlantis? Real place, wiped out by a disaster. Or a story teaching us about ambition and balance.
That's the question, isn't it? And I think it's up to each person to decide. No right or wrong answer here. That's the beauty of Atlantis. It makes you think critically, see different sides, and come to your own conclusions.
Totally. And no matter what you believe, I think Atlantis has some great lessons for everyone.
For sure. We've talked about balance, how everything's connected, using technology wisely, all super relevant today.
They are. Atlantis reminds us that our choices, all of them, have consequences.
Great point. We have the power to create our future, and Atlantis can help us make choices that lead to a better world, a more sustainable, harmonious, enlightened world.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. It's been fantastic exploring Atlantis with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And to our listeners, thanks for coming along on this journey. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop seeking the truth.
Until next time, this has been The Deep Dive.